You know, some TV friendships feel real, and then there are the ones that actually were. One of the most special partnerships in television wasn't built on scripts or schedules. It was built on something deeper, something you can't fake. It was built on friendship. I'm talking about Michael Landon and Victor French, and what they created together on Highway to Heaven. Now, we already know them as Charles Ingalls and Mr. Edwards, two men standing side by side in Walnut Grove, weathering blizzards, raising families, and living by a quiet code. But when Little House ended, their story didn't. It went even deeper, because a few years later, they came back, not to the prairie, but to the open road, and they brought something even more powerful than before, not just chemistry, but brotherhood. Highway to Heaven started in 1984. Michael Landon played Jonathan Smith, an angel sent to Earth to help people find their way. And by his side, Mark Gordon, played by Victor French, a tough, no-nonsense ex-cop with a heart as big as his frame. On paper, it sounds like a classic setup: angel and mortal, idealist and realist. But what made it different? Why did it feel so true? Because it wasn't just acting, it was life. They weren't just playing friends. They were friends, and you could feel it in every scene. The way they walked together, the way they argued, the way one would just look at the other, and you knew what he was thinking. No big speeches, no dramatic music, just presence, and that's rare, because most TV partnerships are performed. But Jonathan and Mark, they were lived, and it all started with Michael. After Little House, he didn't want to just make another show. He wanted to make something that meant something. Stories about hope, about second chances, about people finding their way back to love, faith, and purpose. And he knew, if he was going to do it right, he couldn't do it alone. He needed Victor. Not just as an actor, but as a partner. So he didn't just cast him, he made him his equal. In the show, Mark wasn't a sidekick. He wasn't the comic relief. He was Jonathan's anchor, grounded, practical, skeptical, at first. And that balance, it wasn't just good storytelling, it was real, because that's who they were. Michael, passionate, idealistic, always believing the best in people. Victor, steady, honest, not afraid to say, "Mike, that's not how the world works." And when they played off each other, it wasn't acting, it was conversation. Like two friends who've known each other for years. And they had. By the time Highway to Heaven began, they'd already shared nearly a decade of Little House. They'd seen each other tired, angry, grieving, laughing, and they'd built something most people never get, a friendship that didn't need words to be felt. So, when the cameras rolled, that bond came with them, and it showed. Watch any episode. Jonathan is about to do something noble, maybe a little naive. Mark looks at him, raises an eyebrow, then says, "You're crazy, but I'm with you, and you believe it." Because Victor wasn't just saying lines, he was saying, "I've got your back." And Michael, he wasn't just playing an angel. He was playing someone who knew he wasn't alone. And that's what made the show so special. It wasn't about miracles, it was about connection. About two men, one from heaven, one from earth, learning how to walk through life together. And the truth, they were doing the same thing off screen. Michael was involved in every part of Highway to Heaven, writing, directing, producing. He worked hard, he cared deeply, and yes, he could be intense. But Victor, he wasn't afraid of him. He'd sit with him in the editing room, offer notes, say, "Mike, that scene's too long." And Michael listened. Not because Victor was famous, but because he mattered. Melissa Gilbert once said, Victor was one of the only people who could talk to Michael like a real friend. Not a fan, not a yes man, a friend. And that's what kept their partnership strong. No ego, no competition, just two men who respected each other deeply. And that respect? It changed the whole set. People said the atmosphere on Highway to Heaven was different, warmer, more like family. Because the two leads weren't just working together, they were enjoying each other. And that joy, it made its way into the show, in the jokes, in the silences, in the way Mark would tease Jonathan, not to hurt him, but to keep him human, and in the way Jonathan would look at Mark, not just as a partner, but as a brother. Now, let's talk about the episodes. Because the show wasn't just about Jonathan helping others, it was about Mark being helped too. Over time, we see Mark grow. He starts out hardened, cynical, still carrying the weight of his past. But through Jonathan, he rediscovers hope, faith, love, and in a way, the show mirrored their real lives. Because Michael wasn't just creating a story, he was honoring a friendship. He once said, "I didn't want to make a show about an angel. I wanted to make a show about friendship, about how one person can change another." And he knew, if it was going to work, it had to feel real. And it did. Because every time Jonathan said, "I need you, Mark," it wasn't just a line, it was a truth. And every time Mark said, "All right, partner," it wasn't just loyalty, it was love. Now, here's the heartbreaking part. In 1985, Victor French was diagnosed with lung cancer, and it moved fast. Michael was devastated. He visited him constantly, talked to him, sat with him, and when Victor had to leave the show, Michael didn't write him out with a dramatic exit. He gave him peace. In the season 2 finale, Mark Gordon dies, not in a fire or a fight, but quietly, in a hospital bed, surrounded by love. And Jonathan says, "You were the best friend I ever had." Those weren't just words. They were a goodbye, a real one. And when Victor passed away on September 10, 1989, at just 54 years old, Michael didn't hide his grief. At the funeral, he cried, and later he said, "I lost more than a friend. I lost a brother, and that's what it was. Brotherhood, not by blood, but by choice, by loyalty, by showing up again and again." And even after Victor was gone, the show kept honoring him. Photos of Mark stayed in Jonathan's car. His name came up in conversation, and the bond, it never faded, because it wasn't just part of the show. It was the heart of it. Now let's think about why this matters. Because Highway to Heaven wasn't a ratings giant. It didn't win tons of awards, but it touched people. Deeply fans wrote letters saying, "That show got me through my divorce. I watched it with my dad every week. He's gone now, but I still do. Mark was the dad I never had." And it worked, not because of special effects, but because of truth. Two men who genuinely cared for each other and let that care shine through. And that's the legacy. Because their friendship wasn't just personal. It became ours. We saw in them what we hoped to be. Loyal present. Willing to stand by someone, not because it helps us, but because it's them. So, the next time you see Jonathan and Mark driving down the highway in that old police car, don't just see actors, see two men who lived a friendship most of us only dream of. One built on honesty, on laughter, on showing up no matter what. Michael Landon and Victor French. Not just stars, not just colleagues, but brothers. In life, in work, in memory, and in the hearts of everyone who believes that the greatest gift in life is a true friend, and they had it, and they shared it, and were better for having seen it.